Of 2012 in Carlisle, my wife and I were sitting in a Sonic drive-in. You know, how many of you have heard of a Sonic before? Yeah, it's this crazy thing. I've seen them once or twice. We were sitting at a Sonic drive-in. Finally, our food came. You know, sometimes it takes a while. Food came, and Carlisle discovered that she had ordered honey mustard to go with her popcorn chicken, of course, and she had discovered they had forgotten the honey mustard sauce. And I kid you not, she just burst into tears. Which I'm not gonna lie, guys, this is a safe space, led to me just bursting into tears as well. And we just sat in that Sonic drive-in, crying our eyes out for several minutes. And so, yes, they did forget the honey mustard sauce, which was the tip of the iceberg for us. Like that was what really put us over the edge. See, the truth is that we were eating dinner on the way home, coming from a 14-year-old's visitation. She would be buried the next day. I've told the story before to a lot of you as a youth of mine in Clarksville. I had spent several days in the hospital with her, praying with her and her family as it led up to her death. Months prior, Carlisle and I had been married for 4 months at this time, and we had experienced 2 deaths in that 4 months. We were learning what it was to be married to each other. We were learning what it meant to grieve the loved ones, and we were learning what it meant to not have honey mustard sauce in that moment. And it just sent us over the edge, and we just sat there for a while just weeping because of all of the things that we felt like had been piled up on top of us, and finally it just broke. And something like honey mustard put us over the edge. That began a long journey for us to process through all of those things, and that really was, in a lot of ways, just the beginning for us. But I can tell you that in that moment, if someone would have popped up in the back seat, first I would have peed myself. B, if they had said to me, God will never give you more than you can handle, I would have just lost it on them. In that moment, the last thing that I needed to hear was someone to say, God's not giving you more than you can handle. I would have been like, are you looking at the situation? Currently, it really seems like we have more than we can handle if honey mustard sauce is doing this to us, or the absence of honey mustard sauce as it was. So tonight we're going to look at that phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle. And we're going to look at what that means and maybe what the truth is in that, and maybe where there isn't some truth in that. How many of you have heard that phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle? Right? How many of you have felt kind of like, is that really true? I mean, is it kind of maybe? So part of the thing with this phrase is one, if it says, God won't give you more than you can handle, in that moment, I was like, well, I must be a big sissy because I can't handle this. Right? That was my first beef with that thing, was like, if I can't handle this situation right now, then I must be a huge sissy because I have no capability to deal with this. I'm barely treading water. And the other thing that gets me about this statement is, how does it start? God, well, go a little further. What is it? Give, right? So God gave me this. God made those Sonic people not give me honey mustard. How dare he, you know? God gave me this thing. God gives you. Most of the time when we hear this phrase, what are the things that we're dealing with? We're not dealing with an abundance of great things, right? God didn't give us a bunch of great things. It makes it sound like God gave us a bunch of terrible, bad things, right? So this phrase is, God's giving you bad things, but it's okay, you can handle it. So this phrase, really where it comes from, is a passage in Corinthians. And a little backstory on the church at Corinth. The church at Corinth, that city in general, was like the Las Vegas of that times. And we'll just put that out there. It was a fairly sinful, temptress city, if you will. It was a hard city to live in. And Paul is helping start a church there, right? Paul keeps writing to these people in Corinth saying, it's okay, like there is hope for you. I know things are really hard. And eventually, he gets down to this phrase. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13b. But God is faithful. He won't allow you to be tempted beyond your abilities. So what's the difference? Who can tell me the difference real quick between the phrase we're talking about and what that says? Say what? He won't let you. What else?
The first phrase implies that he's giving you that thing. The second phrase implies that he's giving you strength.
Right. Justin said the first phrase implies that. I just say it again, Justin.
It's the first one implies that he's giving you the bad things.
Giving versus giving strength, right? Exactly. So it's also all about temptation. This phrase that we've come up with, that humankind has come up with, is all about hardship, right? We talk about it when hard things come. This whole thing was about being tempted. You can't be tempted beyond your ability that God has gifted you to resist temptation. It doesn't assure that you won't come up against temptation and hard times in that, but that God has not gifted you beyond the ability to overcome that temptation. All right, so there's two cool things about this passage. First of all, before he gets to that point in the passage, Paul talks about the Exodus. How many know what the Exodus is? A few of you, right? The Exodus in the Old Testament, God's chosen people, the Israelites, were hanging out in Egypt, not because they wanted to, but because they were enslaved in Egypt. And all of a sudden, this dude Moses wanders out into a wilderness and has this interaction with God. God says, "Go free my people. Go give them a way out of being enslaved." And so Moses goes and shows them the way out, and God provides for them all along that way, parts the Red Sea, right? Manna from heaven. Great things happen. They are provided a way out. So Paul, before he gets to that passage talking about you can resist this temptation, God has empowered you to do that. He reminds them of people who have been provided a way out by God. Reminds them God will always provide a way in Exodus. Second, this is something that we read over really quickly when we read in English. Bless you. In this, he says, he won't allow you to be tempted beyond your abilities. When we read that, we kind of read it and look at it singularly. But what is really written there in the Greek is, as we would say, you all, or Henry said earlier, yous. It is actually a plural word. That word you in the Greek, that word that they're using there in the Greek is a plural word. It's not just talking about one person. It's talking about you all. So what he's saying is it's not just you have the ability to overcome this temptation because God's empowered you to do it. It says you all together have the ability. You are not supposed to just resist on your own, but together as a community, you are empowered and able to do this. So two things. God always provides an exodus, a way out. No matter the situation, God provides an exodus, a way out. And then also, God never intended us to take things on alone in the singular form. It was always supposed to be in community, together as a group, as a small group, as a ministry together. Lately, I've had a poem that's been stuck in my head, and I've been kind of lately kind of reading it over and over again and even listening to it. There's a clip where Kevin Spacey reads it, and we're going to listen to it in a second. I've just been playing it over and over again. It's a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. Nailed it. And in this poem, If, he writes to his son. He writes this poem as if he was writing to his son, and he is giving him all of this advice on if and kind of then statements. And I want us to take a moment to kind of close our eyes and to just listen to this poem and the advice that he gives his future son as he knows that he will face hardship and trouble and pain in the world. Let's take a second to listen.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting. Or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. Or watch the things you gave your life to, broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you. If all men count with you but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. Yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
So there's a lot of great one-liners in that. There's a lot of great life advice in there. But I think at the end of it, the things that I have to add to that, there's two things we were talking about from that passage. If in the midst of all of that, you can remember that God always provides a way out, and God never intended us to take this life, good, bad, ugly, on alone, then I think that statement maybe has some more truth in it. God won't give you more than you can handle if we remember God always provides a way out. God never intended for us to take any of this on alone. We got one last story from this morning. This morning I was driving to here. That's what I do Sunday mornings. And I was thinking this past weekend, I've had some friends in town. One of my best friends from college lives in Australia now, and he's been in country for about a week and a half. And so we had a big get-together at our house, and Carlisle and I had a lot of our friends over and their wives and families. And so we've had a house full all weekend, which has been great. But it's one of those things that you kind of catch up and you hear about what's going on in people's lives, right? And lives are crazy, right? I know all of you young people know that there's this big world out there, and y'all are experiencing that. And there is heavy stuff, and there's great stuff. And I was thinking about all of my friends this weekend. I was kind of just praying for them mentally about the different things they had told me. Again, great stuff, not so great stuff, hardships in marriage, new babies coming. And as I was driving down Franklin Road, outside of downtown Franklin, the area in which I live, on either side of me on Franklin Road, I looked to the right and the sun was coming up. And it was just at that moment where it looks like it kind of like lit the trees on fire. And I saw the sunrise, and it was just amazing. And I looked to the left, and there was a rainbow to the left. And as I was driving in the middle, I was driving in rain. And young people, I can't think of a better metaphor than to look at this and to remember that there's going to be a lot of times in your life that you're driving up the middle and it is raining cats and dogs on you. And it feels like it's never going to let up. But on one side, there is the hope of a new day. And on the other side, there is a promise. Remember that the rainbow in the Old Testament is a promise. There's a promise of what is to come. So this next song, we're going to just kind of listen and reflect. I want you to think about that as we're driving up the middle, even if it's raining cats and dogs on you, and you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and you're like, God, how can I handle all of these things? And one side, there is hope, and there is promise, and we are always sandwiched in the middle of that.